So Netflix dropped another Indonesian horror film. This time we have Monster. And this is actually, according to IMDb, this is a remake of The Boy Behind the Door, which I reviewed years ago. I think it came out in like 2019. So that thing's like 5 years old at this point. But I mean, when you watch this, there's definitely glaring similarities. But then you look other places and it's not a remake. It's either a ripoff or a remake, whatever it is. So this is about two kids who are friends, Lana and Robin, I think. Doesn't really matter. But they get kidnapped and they are the boy. He is put up in the house. The girl is left in the trunk and or somewhere like that. And then she gets free. And she has the opportunity to get out of there, but she can't bring herself to do it. Okay, I said that like she considered it. I mean, it's not much of a consideration. Like, this girl is like, no, I'm getting my friend out of here. So she goes into danger. She goes in. She's like scot-free. She could just bail. In all honesty, now I'm thinking about it, her leaving probably would have been more helpful. Just because she could have went and got cops or, help or whatever, like pretty quicker than maybe this would go. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's the movie, and there's very, very little dialogue. The only dialogue in the entire film is a few different characters, like both the kids and one of the villains call out names, and that's it. I don't think there's any other dialogue in the entire film. Although a lot of places I look, it says the film features zero dialogue. The film features no dialogue. There is no dialogue in this film. There is dialogue. It's just people's names being called out. But I mean, there are words spoken in the film. But that's it, and it happens very, very little. So you're talking 99% of this film is completely dialogue free. So, first off, I will say the little girl, Alana, in this, I thought she was great. I really liked the performance from her. But somehow this film is not that tense, and it should be nothing but. Literally, because number one, that's the only thing this film has to offer. And number two, because that is the whole point of the movie, is to be tense. So there's somehow an inability to create a lot of tension here. And I definitely think a lot of that has to do with the direction, and some choices on how they handle certain things. But the one thing that kept me kind of kept me going back and forth was the fact that this starred children. And typically in American cinema, kids have plot armor, right? They can't be hurt for the most part. Now, every once in a while, a kid can get hurt or even killed in American movies, but typically not so much. Typically, if a kid's in a horror movie, they're going to be fine. And because this is child-centric, it takes some of that tension out of it if it was an American film. But because it was an Indonesian film, I was like, you never know. All bets are off when you go into foreign cinema. So that gave me a little bit of tension with, like, I don't know how this is actually going to play out. Even if this is a remake, it doesn't mean they have to stick to what came before. But for some reason, even with all of that, I still was feeling like these kids have plot armor. That these kids, aren't going to get hurt, because they don't really get hurt that much. And in the scenario that we're in, they would. And this film goes into some dark places here and there. I mean, these are kids being kidnapped. They are kidnapped by a monster, right? The guy who kidnaps them is definitely a monster. And then there's another villain who comes in, also a monster. Anybody who would kidnap a child and do this to them are just the scum of the earth. I mean, anybody like that should be just immediately eradicated from the planet. But I don't know. And I get it to a degree, because when you're dealing with someone that is so inferior, both mentally and physically, right? These are really small kids. We're not talking about like teenager kids, right? We're not talking about 14, 15-year-olds where they would have more, mental acuity and even physical. No, these are like, I don't know, 8 or 9-year-olds. They're very, very little. And so they're physically just completely outmatched, right? And they're mentally going to be outmatched as well. They're very, very little. And so that presents a big problem. It's like, how do I keep this tense when the killers, the villains, could so easily take them down if they got in their vicinity? How do we keep this tense when they should be able to outsmart them? And that just comes down to writing, and that just comes down to direction, period. And this film kind of screws up in that area. Now, Alana is a good actress, the little girl who plays Alana. And I think they sell some of the stuff that happens between her and the villains well enough that I was like, okay, fine. But then there's a lot of moments where you have to kind of just suspend your disbelief pretty heavily. It's like, once they're in your vicinity like that, once they're on top of you, it's over. It's over. And I guess, I mean, if we're talking about that kind of power dynamic, right, and the lopsidedness of it, this isn't something that is just unique to kids versus adults, right? This is true in any movie where the villain is grossly overpowered, right? So like, even if it's a really like Predator, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's like one of the strongest men that's ever lived on this planet, and he's puny compared to the Predator. And you kind of have that same problem. It's like Arnold can't take him on a 1-on-1 fight, right? Even though he's Dutch, he's freaking this elite soldier who can take out an entire army by himself. He's nothing compared to the Predator. And you have to figure out a way to write it and direct it. And John McTiernan just rules at this. But you have to come up with ways to make it tense as hell while being completely outmatched by your opponent, right? So this is a whole cat and mouse type of film, much like The Collector, right? Where Arkin is kind of making his way through the house, and even at one point in that film, he gets out, he's scot-free, and he sees that a kid is still in the house, and he goes back after him, right? And he's slinking around the house, and there's a bunch of traps. There's also a repetitiveness to this film. And I think that if we could have changed things up, the writing is definitely the issue here. You can absolutely write this in a way that is believable and makes it tense, right? Like one of I think it was my number 2 favorite film of last year, number 2 or number 3, No One Will Save You, was like this, right? You have a young girl, not this age, but, a young, small, petite girl who is up against an adversary that is far beyond her strength, skill level, intelligence. There's almost no dialogue spoken in the film. It mostly takes place in her house, and she's trying to sneak around, to avoid these, monsters. And that is just brilliant all the way through. Everything about it, every decision, every way that movie plays out is just brilliant, right? And it's a very similar-ish scenario in what I just compared it to. So it's not that it can't be done, and it can be done with kids, right? It can be done seriously. We saw it with the boy behind the door. Or it can be done playfully, like within Home Alone or something, like when you have a kid going up. But you, of course, in a movie like this, don't want to do the Home Alone thing because it would be too silly. So you have to find the right balance of things. There's a scene towards the end that involves like a car chase that is like the least tense car chase I've ever seen. And it's like the killer has them dead to rights. It's over. They don't do anything about it. And then later on, something else happens. And where it ends up, it's like, how could that possibly have happened? How could that... This is just stupid for stupid's sake now. Like, you're not even trying. I felt like the end they kind of just gave up. They were like, I don't know. Like, what do we do with little kids? How can they possibly... Maybe, show that they have some kind of talents when the movie starts. Showcase some of those talents that they can later use in the film that gives them a leg up on the competition, right? Show that they're really smart. Show that they are problem solving. Show something. They're just supposed to be regular kids. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, from a writing standpoint, you have to overcome your limitations. And your limitations going into a movie like this is kids versus adults in a serious setting. This isn't Home Alone, right? Kevin can't just be running around and, throwing paint cans and they're just going to sit there and take them. No, in real life, they push those paint cans out of the way and Kevin would be dead. They would beat his ass to death in reality, right? So you have to figure out a way to make it feel realistic. That's where the tension comes in, is when it feels real. And unfortunately, you're going to have to hurt the kids. They're going to get banged up, like really, really bad. And if you don't want to do that, then don't make a movie like this, right? So overall, I liked it okay. I thought that because I really liked Alana, because I really wanted to see them get out of the situation, because I was like rooting for them, they at least got that part of me. So I was engaged. They just didn't keep me entertained. I was engaged without the entertainment. It was kind of just like, this could have been more intense. This could have been more, thought out. God, I'm telling you guys, like the second villain, the first one does some really hammy shit, but the second one, while they can feel a little more menacing at times, there's just a lot of conveniences. And then once they get outside, that's where it just starts to get so eye-rolly. It's like, come on, you guys can do better than this. You can write this scene better, because it's just convenience after convenience. It's poor decision. It's bad filmmaking, bad shot selection. The car chase, that's like, feels like I'm watching it in slow motion. And it's like, you have a car that can drive 100 miles per hour. Why are you driving one? Like all that stuff is so poorly shot, and you'll see what I'm talking about if you watch it. It's so tamed down, and the film tries to be really gritty. That's the thing, right? It's the way it's presented. They reveal some stuff about what's happened before and what's happening currently in the house with past victims. And that stuff is meant to be kind of gruesome and like, oh, we're edgy. We're going pretty hard here. And it's like, oh yeah, that shit is dark, but you got to commit to that through the rest, right? You then present your foes as, these people who they have no line, right? You've now presented your villains as genuine monsters. So they're not going to let up. They're not going to take it easy. They're going to be relentless. And you've got to showcase them like that. They have to be shown to be adversaries that are not to be trifled with in any way, and they don't care that you're children. Maybe they'll underestimate you, but only once. You know? Anyway, the direction and the writing hurt this film tremendously. But the performances from the little girl, and then eventually the little boy who isn't in this a lot. I like the kids. But a good performance from them can only take this film so far. Anyway, that's that. It is an Indonesian film that you don't have to worry about the subtitles because there's no talking outside of the names, which you don't even need subtitles for that because they're just calling out names. I'm pretty sure you can figure that out, especially when they're names like we have here, in English. So if this is like your first, one of the first foreign films, you don't got to worry about subtitles or dubbing. It needs neither. Anyways, guys, all right, let me know if you watch it. It's on Netflix. Did I mention that? Yeah, I think I did. All right, bye.